mind screaming. No, you don't.
Are your girls napping right now, or are they?
One is at school, and one is she's gonna nap. Yeah, she's probably going down for a nap right now.
Yeah. What are the ages of your girls again?
My oldest is 5.5, and my youngest is 14 months.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah.
We're in it.
You've
We're in
got
it now.
you're in the trenches.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for being here. This is the Empowered by Victor's podcast, just a platform where we're really trying to just elevate women's stories and women's expertise and women's experiences and women's realities, trying to keep it as real as possible, but using this platform to educate, empower, entertain all of our core values of Victor's movement. So thank you for being
Yeah.
here.
Thanks for
I'm
having
super excited. Congrats. Let's start there.
me.
Congrats on winning
Thank you.
Mrs. Nebraska, excuse
Yeah.
me.
Yep. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, I feel
Not
like
one that, go ahead.
no, I feel like it's been 10 years since I did a pageant and before this one. And I just like it feels surreal like being back in that world again. I feel like I'm back 10 years ago. I don't know why. I just feel like I got so removed from the pageant world, and then to be back in it is just it's been interesting.
I'm sure it's probably changed. You've changed, like showing
Yeah,
up as a different version of yourself.
right. Yeah, totally. Definitely different.
Okay, because you also won Miss Teen. Is that
Yes.
right? Miss Teen Nebraska?
Yep. So I was
Miss Teen Nebraska in
Nebraska,
2010?
yes, 10. And then I did Miss Nebraska USA in 2014. So
Okay.
exactly 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So you are the only, what do we call you? Participant? What do you call yourself when you're in a pageant?
A
What's
contestant.
contestant? Thank
Yeah.
you. The only teammate?
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
The only contestant that has won 1, 2, 3, right? Like
Yeah. I
teen.
believe so. In Nebraska for sure. I'm not sure nationwide, but I wish there was a way to figure that out. I have no idea.
And they are all similar organizations. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're pretty similar. I mean, a pageant is a pageant. So the main difference would be like in the Miss, if you went to Miss America, you have the talent portion. So I went to Miss USA, which doesn't have the talent. And then this married one does not have talent either. Being a mom is our talent and a wife.
I think that's plenty.
Yes.
Juggling all the things,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
That's so exciting, though. What made you decide to enter back into that world? I mean, we'll go into your background here in a little
Yeah.
bit, but what made you decide to like recently, add this back on your plate?
I think I just got to the point where I was feeling a little bit lost in the sauce, if you will, of like being a mom and a wife and being a baseball wife. And I just felt like finally I was feeling back to myself physically. And I was just kind of feeling like I wanted a challenge of something of some sort, something to work towards, a goal to have. Um, and I was trying to think back to a time where I was my most confident self, and that would have been when I was competing in pageants because I feel like you're just very in tune mentally, physically with what's going on in the world, with your body, with your fitness, your diet, all those things. So I was like, why don't I just see if I could do it again and see how it goes? So
That's amazing. That's
hmm
amazing.
yeah.
I feel like so many women go through exactly what you're saying right now.
hmm
That loss of identity,
Yeah.
essentially,
Mhm.
in a lot of ways, whether that's, you know, in a marriage like yours, like
Yeah.
obviously for those that don't know, Amanda is married to a MLB pitcher that is also from Nebraska, but he
hmm
is currently playing for the Phillies right
New
now.
York.
No, I'm sorry, the Mets.
Yes.
Yes, he's at the Mets right now.
hmm
Originally was drafted by the Phillies.
Yes.
So that's a lot. That's,
Yeah.
busy in and of itself.
hmm
Requires a lot of sacrifice on your part, I'm sure, just from
Yeah.
a family dynamic, moving, traveling, all of
Mhm.
those things. But then also two girls,
Yeah.
like you said, 5 and almost a year and a half. Like
hmm
that's a lot of capacity and bandwidth that's taken up just in who you have to show up as in
Mm-hmm.
supporting your family. And a lot of women struggle with like, okay, like where do I fit in?
Mm-hmm.
You have this journalist career in the past, like you've had, these pageantries, you've had your nonprofit, like there's a lot of things that you're doing for the world and have done for the world. But when we
Mm-hmm.
get into that stage of life, I think a lot of us like lose that sense of self,
Yeah.
and start looking for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think I got I love being a wife and a mom. I adore that role. But I think during baseball, it's a really long season. It's 9 months out of the year. And it feels like you're a single parent a lot of the times because I do have a very supportive partner, obviously, but part of it is me supporting and our girls supporting him in his dream by following him and being uprooted all the time and being alone all the time. And he is usually on the road for 7 to 10 days and then home for 7 to 10 days and then on the road. And they have about 2 off days a month, which are always at home, like aren't always when
Mhm.
they're in New York. So sometimes we don't even get an off day with him unless we fly to where he is. And it's just a lot of pick up and go. And I think you can just kind of lose yourself in that a little bit. And I also feel like during baseball season, it's like, oh, this is Jake's wife. It's not ever, not that it has to be about you, but it's always, we go to events and things in baseball and people are, oh, who are you married to? And it's like, oh, which one's your husband? And it can just get a little bit like, I don't know. I don't want to sound like ungrateful or feeling like it needs to be about you or anything like that, but it does. It just gets to be like, what is my purpose? Especially because a
Yeah.
lot of women in baseball don't work because they stay home and so that they can keep our families together and raise our kids while dad's gone and that sort of thing. And so you just sometimes feel like, what am I contributing to
Hmm.
family?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned to you before we started, Lauren Burrows is a good friend
Mm-hmm.
of mine, and she talks a lot about like finding her purpose in the
Mm-hmm.
family dynamic as supporting a professional athlete of,
Yeah.
you know, finding the identity as a family. Like this is our
Mm-hmm.
collective goal. Like,
Yeah.
he may be the one executing and, um, being on the field, obviously pitching. Like
Yeah.
you probably wouldn't want to get out there and do that
No.
personally.
Mm-mm. No way.
But it's a collective unit it's a family experience. It's a family
Mm-hmm.
goal. It's
Yeah.
you have chosen to take that on as a part of who you are, and
Mm-hmm.
you're feeling the reward of that experience just as much as he is in the wins and losses, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. And you know, I don't play baseball, nor do I claim to know anything about just the basics, but it is a lot of like supporting them when they have a bad game or might be not doing so hot for a while, especially as a pitcher and just baseball in general. It's a game of failure. And so
Mhm.
being able to be that support system, but yet I don't know what it feels like and I don't know what advice to give and I don't know what went wrong or why it went wrong. So sometimes that can feel like I carry a lot of it on my shoulders because I wish I could make it better or do something. And, watching them struggle is not fun. And
Mhm.
sitting in the stands when they get taken out and the whole stadium boos, and you're sitting there
Mhm.
feeling this big and feeling like you want to burst
Mhm.
into tears for them is not
Mhm.
easy. And it's hard to know the right words to say. So I pray a lot about, help me find the right things to say, be the right kind of support that he needs right now. Um, and maybe even be that safe space that's not baseball related. And I know our
Mhm.
girls, I think when we had kids, it definitely put a lot into perspective for him because he comes home and they have no idea what went on in the game or how it went or, what he's doing, but he's just dad and they love him so much. And so I think once we had kids, it started to not seem so it's serious because it's his job obviously and he can lose his job any day from not performing or whatever other reason they have, but perspective is everything and family is what's important and they love him no matter what. So
Absolutely.
Mhm.
That's, I mean, powerful, right? Like to
Yeah.
see that shift in him, I'm sure, as an athlete,
Hmm.
but also like you as a mom, like, your emotions in those hard
Hmm.
times, like
Yeah.
you're experiencing like those same
Yeah.
emotions, and your kids have no idea like what's happening
Yeah.
or
They definitely don't. They're
no.
very my 5-year-old is finally getting to the point where she gets it and she like understands that dad plays baseball and what he does is really cool. But obviously our 14-month-old has not a clue in the world. And even for the last 5 years, I mean, this is probably the first season that our 5-year-old has been like excited. She wants to go into the locker room. She wants to go on the field. She wants to run the bases, and she's jumping up and down when he's coming in the game, and that's been fun. That's been a fun change. So
Yeah. Yeah. My middle son plays well, both of my boys play baseball, but my
hmm
middle son plays baseball still. He'll be on a 14 this he just finished his 13U majors season.
nice.
And it's been, I feel like it's insane and crazy just being a baseball mom and
hmm
traveling baseball in Nebraska
Yeah.
versus, I mean, what you guys do is like a whole nother level. But I truly believe, like, I think all sports and all athletics can really teach us something, or any kind of competition,
hmm
can teach us something about ourselves, about the world around us, how we show up, what failure is, what that means, like what it feels
Yeah.
like. And
hmm
I really feel like baseball is like one of those things that like
Yeah.
will really teach you how to fail and fail
hmm
often,
hmm
and learning how to come back from that, and that it's part of life. Like it is a part of the game. Like that is, if you're, there hardly anybody's even 50% successful. Like
Yeah.
it's such a crazy perspective to
hmm
have in that space. And the character traits that develops, I know for me, like watching in my son, like the way who he's becoming through
hmm
that is so cool to watch. And
Yeah.
so like his adversity and all of those things. So like to have your girls around that is going to be such
Yeah.
a valuable, amazing experience, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, it is. It's definitely a lot of lessons learned. And even for me, just like keeping my mouth shut for things. And we get a lot of social media hate and that kind of thing. And like just learning how to not respond when you want to so badly. And just being able to just put it away a little bit is a learning experience for me because I just want to fight for the people that I love all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't add fuel to the fire, don't respond, don't. So I learn a lot each season because there's a lot of things I want to say, but I don't.
Yeah, they'd probably come after you for that a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
especially in New York, probably. Yeah.
so you grew up in Nebraska, right?
Yes, I did.
Columbus,
Mm-hmm.
Columbus, Nebraska. What
Yeah.
was that? What was that like?
Small town. I mean, it's small, but not as small as a lot of other Nebraska towns. My husband, for example, grew up in Wymore. I think he had like 20 people in his graduating class or something crazy like that. I had over 100, which doesn't seem small, but I guess to somewhere else it might seem small. So just everybody knows everybody, small community, little to no crime,
Mm-hmm.
just a easy living, I'd say.
What was the girl culture like in your school,
Uh,
like growing up back then? Like you know, I think that I personally also like went to a tiny school here in Lincoln
mhm,
actually, but I mean there was 30 something in my graduating class. So, um, essentially I felt like my classmates were my siblings in a lot of ways
mhm,
because like
mhm.
we grew up together so
Yeah.
closely over the years. But what was a girl code like
Mm.
in that small town environment growing up?
I just can't imagine growing up now with social media and the change
Mhm.
because when I was in high school, we had like MySpace and Facebook, and it was fine, but it wasn't as cyberbully-y as it is now.
Mhm.
So I'm just glad that we didn't grow up that way. I mean, we were kind of in that generation where like cell phones were like starting to be a big deal. So I'd say I had like my core group of friends, and then I kind of had, I had some like mean girl run ins. I think everybody does. And it's just I think it's just par for the course, sadly. But I
Mhm.
think I mean, it's unfortunate, obviously, but I think it's good for you a little bit when you go into the real world. But yeah, I mean, I had some really, really, really best friends, and I think that makes all the difference, because I would rather have two best friends than a bunch of wishy-washy friends, and not feel like
Yeah.
I know those people the way that I did the two that were good friends of mine.
Yeah. And so when you decided to go down the route of like doing Miss Teen
Mm-hmm.
pageantry, did I know your mom was a also a Mrs. Nebraska, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were familiar with, pageantry at that point, but when you
Mm-hmm.
decided to, start to pursue this, was there some kickback from the women, from the girls around you? Were they supportive? Like, how did that feel, at that stage of life?
I feel like my best friends were excited for me and kind of like, oh, whatever. Our town was not really like a big pageant town, and I feel like Nebraska's not really a big pageant state. But I feel like my good friends were like, oh, yeah, like that's great. We're excited for you, whatever. And then it was kind of like the group of girls that were like frenemies, but in the same like kind of circle, like just didn't acknowledge it. It was like their way of just not acknowledging it at all, just like
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And then when I won, like I felt like people were kind of like making fun of me behind the scenes, I guess. And
Hmm.
I don't know, like I can't think of for sure, but I do remember feeling like kind of insecure about it. Just kind of like feeling like it was, maybe did I add fuel to the fire of them being mean to me or not liking me for whatever reason. So, um, yeah, but I also think I was so focused on going to, it was my senior year when I did it. So I was also just kind of moving on to another stage of life. And I feel like it was such a stark difference, because in high school, it was like nobody really acknowledging what it was or that I was doing it. And then in college, it was like I joined a sorority, and everywhere we went, my new sorority friends were like, she's Miss Teen Nebraska. Like, she's Miss Teen Nebraska. Everybody thought it was like so cool. So that was a definitely a change. So
Yeah, I bet.
yeah, it was like everybody thought that was like the coolest thing ever, and it was like such a badge of honor, and that was not
Well,
the
it is. I mean,
high
it's a
school.
huge accomplishment. I mean, it is. It's a huge accomplishment, no matter what age you're doing this. Like
Hmm.
and we can get into the details on it too, but the accomplishment in and of itself, like,
Hmm.
and I would imagine, like, I know being a teen girl, like,
Yeah.
myself, like, to stand out in any way
Right.
feels overwhelming, and it feels very vulnerable, and it feels very uncomfortable in a lot of ways, whether it's positively or negatively.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
to feel confident enough not only to like put yourself out there to compete in something
Right.
like this, but also to like show up day to day life as now Miss Teen Nebraska,
Yeah.
probably took a lot of guts on your part in a lot of ways, and probably was pretty transformative to like how you who the person you've grown up to be.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely brought me out of my shell, and I feel like I went into college feeling more like not as nervous, and because I had learned so many skills from pageantry, and that was my first pageant ever. So I didn't like wasn't in that world growing up or anything like that. But I do feel like it prepared me for college and to be on my own, and be able to speak to group settings and just like make friends and be outgoing. So I really appreciate it for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you decided on journalism.
Hmm.
You went to the University of Nebraska,
Yeah.
correct? And like you said, we're in a sorority. Um, how has journalism helped you not only like as an individual, but also, as a um, pageantry contestant?
Yeah. I love to write, and I've always been like that. My favorite subject has always been English and that kind of thing. And so that was kind of what got me into it, was I like storytelling, and I like writing in storytelling. And so that was definitely something that was with my degree. And then also I'm very nosy when it comes to like crime and stuff. And so I'm the type of person that like if there's a car accident, like my head is cranked like until I can't like watch any longer. Like I have to know what's going on at all times, like in that world. And so that's where I was like, I feel like this would be a good fit for me. Is, I like to write, I like to be in the know, I like to know what's going on and have all the details. And so that kind of propelled me into the degree. And then I feel like pageantry and journalism went hand in hand because I had to pay attention to what was going on around the world anyways, for pageantry and for journalism. So they kind of went hand in hand. And then also being able to write and think on my toes is very helpful in pageantry. So I actually, even to this day, like my friends come to me when they want to, like, when they need to like say something to somebody, or they need to come up with, something in writing or whatever, because I'm very good at like writing things out and making it sound good and responses and that kind of thing. So people, whether they're having an issue with a relationship or a friend, or they need, a slogan, or they need a bio or anything like that, like I'm very good at putting that kind of stuff together. So I feel like that also has helped in pageantry too.
That's awesome. But I mean, it's such a life skill in
Yeah.
general, right? Like you said, like in your personal life, but I'm sure, obviously benefiting you now and re-entering this world.
Yeah.
So when did you meet Jake?
We met when I was a senior in college.
Okay, so
Yeah.
he's been around for two pageants now. I mean, for as much as he can be, anyway.
Yeah, so we met right after I competed at Miss USA. So I think
Okay,
it was the summer after I graduated college. So, yeah, we met. So he was towards the tail end of that. And so this is really his first pageant that he had to like watch me compete in, and, be able to either walk away. Sorry, I don't know why I'm so tired today.
no, you're good.
Uh, be able to either walk away as the winner or walk away as the loser. So, and he wasn't able to be there, so he was watching on the live stream, and he was like, he said he downed like a whole bottle of wine just like watching it because he was so nervous.
I loved the video that what you posted. That was like the cutest
Oh
thing
my gosh,
ever.
on my
Them
daughter.
celebrating.
I
Yes.
know, yeah. So I think he was in Chicago playing the Cubs, and so he was watching the Facebook stream that they put on, which like we were like this big because it was like all the way up in the balcony, and it was like shooting off of an iPhone, so it was like he could barely see what was going on, anyways. And then my parents were there with my daughter, and yeah, that was super special to have that video.
Oh, that was so cute. That was so
Yeah,
cute.
I know. I'll
Um,
remember that forever.
yeah, absolutely. So you decided to compete again and won out of college.
Hmm.
Did that help like kickstart your career, like within the journalism space? Like, was that like a good, obviously learning experience, but
Hmm.
obviously, who you know, how you know them, like all of
Yeah.
those things matter in regards to, getting that professional experience.
Yeah, so I won Miss Nebraska USA when it was in the fall of my senior year. So I was already well into the journalism side of things. I had not yet applied for jobs or anything like that, but I feel like when I did start applying for jobs after I graduated, to be able to put that I was Miss Nebraska currently was probably got me in a lot more interviews than I probably maybe would have, because it's just something that's eye catching, especially when you're the reigning at the time. And so I got into an internship. I think it was my senior year. I think. Yeah, I got into an internship, and I feel like that helped with like being able to say that I was Miss Nebraska at the time. And then that was with Channel 8 here in Lincoln. And then I applied at 10/11 here in Lincoln and hadn't had an interview and got the job from there. So I definitely feel like it added a little bit of like pizzazz to my resume.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what all is going into these things? So, well, no, let's not go there yet. Let's wait a second. So we get through Miss Nebraska,
Hmm.
USA, right?
Yeah.
And then you and Jake are dating, start to like, his career starts to probably take off,
Yeah.
and that feeling of like, what do I do? I'm sure probably starts to come up of like,
Yeah.
I have this job and this career path that I'm on.
Yeah.
And my partner, soon to be husband, is going down not only his own career path, but he's also dealing with medical stuff along with
Hmm.
this, right? This
Yeah.
whole time, which we can talk about. But how did that decision come to you to be, to take the step to step away from your position? You know, without feeling like resentment or
Yeah.
frustration or feeling like you had to give up certain things for yourself to
Yeah.
support him.
I think for me, it was I hadn't gotten the job yet. We were already dating and I was interviewing and stuff. And I also don't think you really know what you're in for until you're in it, you know? And I'm so sorry.
Don't apologize.
We were newly dating um, when I got the job. And I think my off days, if I remember right, were Mondays and Tuesdays. So not very conducive to like visiting and stuff because it's not like I could take the weekend off. Like I could go Monday and Tuesday, but usually in is there they do three-day series is
Yeah.
typically. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, he would be somewhere, which worked out, but I wouldn't be able to leave until Monday morning because so I would do like evening news. So I wouldn't get off work till like 11 p.m. So it's not like I could leave on Sunday night. So I would leave first thing Monday morning, but then I would have to work at 2 o'clock on Wednesday. That would be like my next day. So the window was like very short. So if he was somewhere far away, I mean, we're looking at like one night sometimes, because for me to leave Wednesday morning was always so risky because if there was any issue with the flight, it's like I can't just not show up for work. So
Mhm.
depending on where it was, and it just got to be really difficult to visit each other and see each other. And I I loved what I did, but I didn't love it where I could picture myself doing it forever. Um, so we tried for as long as possible with that, and then it did get to a point where I didn't feel safe necessarily, because when you're in local news, it's very like you're a one man band. And so I was going to the scenes of crimes at night by myself with my camera, basically a huge target on your back, being like, here I am with my camera, like, come mess around, like people love to be
Right.
in front of the camera and stuff. And there was also a couple things like morally that bothered me. With the position was like, I remember one of my final straws was there was a mother that had 6 kids and they went to the Grand Island Water Park and one of the children drowned in the lazy pool and they were
Mhm.
from Lincoln and they wanted me to go knock on the door with the camera and ask her like how could that happen? How could they let that happen? And it was
Mhm.
just like one of those things where I was like, I can't do like obviously she didn't let it happen. Like, what do you mean?
Mhm.
And so I remember I went there and because they were like, you need to go try and get this interview. And we had called her and she had said, I'm not doing this interview. I don't want to talk, whatever. And they were like, go to her house. And, if you're there in person, like she won't say no. And I was just so uncomfortable with that. And so I got there and I was like, oh, they're not home. So I called my news director and I'm like, they're not home. And she was like, well, take the camera, walk up to the door, have it be filming and show on video that we tried to speak with her and they didn't come to the door. And I was like, okay, well, since I just lied and said that they weren't home, like, I don't want to have to go. Like, I just did not want her to answer in her time of like grieving and answer the door and have me standing there asking like for an interview. It just felt so wrong and icky. And I remember like, I don't know what I ended up doing. I think I stayed like far away and like got myself like walking back, towards the camera so
Mhm.
it looked like I don't know how I did it, but I just remember thinking like I don't know if I can do this. Like you just can't really have
Mhm.
not that you can't have morals, but like you have to be that person and I just like didn't want to be that person.
Mhm.
And then there was also like a murder or something that had happened and they sent me like to this trailer park like by myself at night in the dark and I was just like this is not like Jake was like so mad. He was like, God, I was
Yeah.
gonna be going with you and it's just like I don't know about this and we were just dating and so it was definitely like a gamble to be like I don't want to do this anymore as a career. But I found another job in Lincoln that didn't have to do with journalism, but it was a more weekends off and 9 to 5 and, you know, a little bit more flexible. And so I did that for a while. And then I think we got engaged, and then he got really sick. And then that's where
Mm-hmm.
I decided to leave work completely, and we were engaged and go along with him and be his like sole caretaker while he was sick. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk more
Mhm.
about that. I know that's like again when we were talking about coming back to pageantry this year,
Mhm.
like you have been through from the last time you competed 10 years to now, you've
Mhm.
been through a lot of different life struggles and
Mhm.
changes. And one of those being supporting your fiance
Mhm.
through a very challenging set of surgeries.
Yeah.
So if you want to speak more to that experience and what Jake has been through.
Yeah. So he has ulcerative colitis, and he has had ulcerative colitis since he was 10 years old. So nothing new that he's been dealing with, but if you have IBD or you know somebody with IBD, it's very like ebbs and flows. They call it having flare ups, like when you get sick. Um, and he was the first couple months that we were dating, he had a flare up, I remember. And I didn't know that he had what he had because he had not been open about it at all in anything publicly or anything like that. And so I made a comment about like his jeans like being too big or something. And then he kind of like told me like that he was losing weight and because he has this and he's sick and blah, blah, blah. And so, and then he was getting infusions like every 6 weeks and to try and, you know, take care of it. And so, it just kind of ebbed and flowed for a while, for a couple years. And then, like I said, when we were engaged, it was the off season. Um, and he typically has flare ups in the off season for whatever reason. I think changing schedule, changing diet, they have everything that they need at their fingertips when they're in baseball with the best food and best doctors and trainers, and they're working out, and, you know, it's just different. Um, and so whenever he comes home, he tends to just like not feel as well sometimes. But this time was a little bit different. He just couldn't like come out of it. And I think he lost like 20 pounds in like 2 or 3 weeks. And he was going to see his doctor, and they did a colonoscopy, and they basically said that, you know, he was in bad shape and that there was a lot of what they call polyps on his colon and in his large intestine. And that they, you know, the longer that you let them sit on there, the more likely they are to become cancerous. And so they said, you know, the best thing that you could do is get your colon and large intestine removed. And obviously, being an athlete and actively being an athlete, that's not something that's like a quick injury to come back from. And so it was a little bit scary. And then we were with the Texas Rangers at the time, and we asked them, or not really asked, but we were like, this is what's happening, and you know, it's not great. And they said, if you were my son, I would tell you to do that because that's going to save your life. And if you want kids and all these things, you know, then you need to be the healthiest version of yourself that you can be, and whatever that takes. You know, if you were my son, I would tell you to do it in a heartbeat. So we're here for you. And that really propelled us to feel comfortable doing it because it didn't feel like they were going to turn their backs on him necessarily, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so we ended up going through with that in January of that year. And he got his entire colon removed. And we did it in Minnesota at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. Came
Mm-hmm.
back here, and then we went to the season as scheduled, but I went along with him because, like I said, it was just a lot of ebbs and flows even when you're in the middle of that. So it was a 3-part surgery. So the first part was to remove the colon and the large intestine, and then you had to let that sit for 12 weeks. And so he had the external bag, and
Mm-hmm.
12 weeks went by, and then they make what's called a J pouch. So they take your small intestine and they basically like loop it into like a bubble letter J essentially, and that becomes your new reservoir. And then they pull that all the way down to your butt essentially, and
Yeah.
that becomes your new system. And so then you have to let that sit for 12 weeks, and then the final surgery is taking the bag down and reconnecting everything, and then you basically have to learn how to go to the bathroom again.
Mm-hmm.
And so for him to do that alone, and he wasn't traveling with the team, we were there and we were going to home games and stuff, but when they were on the road, they don't take injured people on the road with them. So it was something that I just was called to be there and just not work. And that's just, I just felt like that's where I needed to be at the time. And honestly, it was the hardest year that our relationship has ever had, because going back to even just being a baseball wife, like, I don't know what it feels like. I don't know how to help you.
Right.
I can't relate at all. And just the frustration that he's feeling, and I'm his safe place, and we don't have our family around. And so, he's having a bad day and it gets taken out on me, and I don't blame him one bit. We take things out on the people that are closest to us, and it was just very difficult. But it also propelled us into having such a good marriage, because it was right away, for better or for worse, and sickness and in health, and just kind of like, if we could get through that, we can get through anything. So yeah, it was successful, and he ended up pitching in September of that season. So way faster of a timeline than they ever thought he could, or was told that he could, and was finally able to put on weight. And I remember we got married and we went on our honeymoon, and I had taken a picture of him like walking towards me on the beach, and I posted it, and his coach called him like within like an hour, and he was like, dude, like, you are yoked. Like, I've never seen this before. Like, you look so good. Like, how do you feel? Like, I didn't even realize that was you. Like, you look so healthy and strong, and like, we're so happy for you. And so that was like really cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What propelled you guys to then start Got It Out, the
Yeah.
nonprofit that helps like support,
Yeah.
anybody suffering from the same condition?
Yeah. So I think in probably around 2015, he decided, it's this, I'm not going to hide this anymore. And I'm not really sure like what propelled him. I think just the support of me and whoever else. Of whoever else was around us at the time. And he was like, let's make shirts and let's give the proceeds to the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. And, I want to be out in the open about this. So that's kind of like where that started. And so then every team that he was on, we would have a different themed shirt for that team. And then we would sell the shirts and give the proceeds to the Ulcerative Colitis Foundation of America. And then when we got married when we were engaged and he was really sick and going through all of his surgeries and stuff, we were almost just like bored, and we were like, let's do more. Like, we want to do more. And also we started to kind of do some research into the organization that we were donating to, and feeling like all of the dollars weren't going towards the things that you want them to go towards, and kind of finding out how much, the CEO and stuff is getting paid in that role. And it was kind of like, this is really unfortunate. And then also we felt like from a caretaker side, there's not a lot of support like on that end, or recognition on that end, from people who are doing the tireless job of, taking care of somebody who's not well and struggling. And so we kind of decided that, there's no cure for either ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, and feels like from the research that we have done that they are pretty far off still from anything like that. So, I think a lot of organizations focus on finding a cure, and when really more people just want support and resources more than anything, especially in a disease that's incurable, and, being able to have that community when it's something that you feel so alone about, was important to us. So that's kind of where the idea came about, was connecting patients and caregivers and offering that community of support, and kind of figuring out where different wings of hospitals, like for example, at Atlanta Children's, in their GI department, we bought these gaming systems for kids when they get infusions to be able to play video games, and they're on wheels, and, so we sponsored, I think 5 of those, and got to like deliver them, and just different things, like needs that people don't really think about, as far, when people are hospitalized or getting their treatments. And I just think it was really important for Jake to be somebody that people could look up to and see that he was doing it at the highest level, and that it doesn't have to stop you. And he said he didn't have anybody to look up to or that was open about it. And there's rarely any athletes still that are open about it, as open as he is about it. And we started doing meet and greets at the stadiums with different support groups in the area.
How cool.
I talk to the caretakers, and he talks to the patients, and it's cool to see kids open up, because a disease that's based around going poop is not something that people like to talk about, let alone when you're a kid. It's like so embarrassing for them. So for him to open up and just kind of get them to come out of their shell a little bit is really cool to watch and very important to us. So that's kind of
Absolutely.
where it all came together.
That's so amazing. So
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, and being able to like, like you said, have support for the caretakers
Mhm.
and you like kind of just falling into that role.
Yeah.
And but also obviously choosing that role for
Mhm.
yourself
Mhm.
after leaving your, job and everything else,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
letting life take you, but finding a way to give back and
Yeah.
it's still incredible. And we'll make sure to put some information in there for anybody that's
Yeah.
interested in finding
Yeah.
out more. Um, so then you get married, obviously, like after these surgeries. How soon after you got married did you get pregnant with your first?
1 month. Literally. Like, Jake was so excited to
Yeah.
start a family, and I was so terrified. Um, and I had done some research, and it was like, most people conceive within, it takes about 6 months on average. And I was like, okay, yeah, we can start. Like, it'll take, we'll have the whole summer, and it'll like, and yeah, 1 month later, I was looking at a positive test, like, oh my God, scared to death. So yeah, it was quick.
What was pregnancy like for you with that experience? I mean, I think everybody's in different camps on whether they love it and they're like it's
Hmm.
their best, they feel like the best of
Yeah.
themselves. Or,
It's
uh,
funny, I say I love it when I'm not pregnant, and then when I'm pregnant, I'm like, this is horrible. It's so hard watching your body change. Like, it's
yes.
so hard. And I am a weight gainer when I'm pregnant. Both
Mhm.
times I've gained 60 pounds with my first and second. And I don't know why. I just can't stop. Like, I
Mhm.
don't limit myself at all. And, I had a doctor once tell me that your body's going to gain what it gains, and I'm just a gainer. And as long
Yep.
as my blood sugar and everything looks good, they're not, concerned about it, because some people just gain, some people lose, some people barely
Hmm.
gain. Just genetics and what your body needs, it's going to do. And I hold on to a lot of like fluid.
Hmm.
That's always like, I always, both times I've lost like 20 pounds like that, just from like, just draining everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I just have come to terms with like, that's just who I am when I'm pregnant. But I don't mind it. I think it's really beautiful, obviously, like creating a life. And there's like nothing to me like that feeling of when you see your baby for the first time,
Hmm.
and you're like 5 minutes ago, that was like inside of me. Like, that is like the
Hmm.
most crazy, awesome, like surreal thing ever. And then, those couple days in the hospital, just like looking over at that baby and being like, that's mine. Like, that is so weird. So yeah, I don't mind it. But I'm saying that as I'm not pregnant. When I'm pregnant, I'm like, I hate this. Nothing
I
fits.
can't stand
And
this. Yeah,
yeah.
no, I get it. I'm not a happy pregnant person personally.
Yeah.
I just feel like hijacked.
Yes.
Like I just feel like completely out of control, which honestly, like with my third pregnancy is what really has triggered Victress into existence is like
Yeah.
I approached it so different and like not trying to have control, but trying to have a role in the whole process.
Yeah.
And that was, that can be a whole nother conversation, but that was like the main, motivating factor of like trying to get this thing rolling was like
Yeah.
realizing a woman's like role in that experience. But yeah, and then, having a baby, like especially from the lifestyle I'm sure that you've been living up to this
Hmm.
point, that had to be very different and very
Hmm.
challenging in
Yeah.
regards to roles and responsibilities and,
Yeah.
expectations and sleep. I'm sure if you had an athlete in the same bedroom as you, like things
Yeah.
probably look different.
Yeah. I think it's like, I guess when you're young, and as young as Jake and I at the time, like, it is rare to have, him working and I'm not working. I'm just like la di da, like going wherever he's going and not a care in the world, and, not worried about anything. And so then I think when we had our first in the off season, so Jake was home, which was very helpful. Was I went into a little bit of a shock. Just like, I felt like I, I had really bad postpartum depression and anxiety
Mhm.
with my first, and like very scary bad. And I remember waking up in the morning and feeling like somebody died, but I didn't know
Mhm.
who. And it just like every day, like I would just wake up like sick to my stomach, like in the morning, or the sun would start to go down around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and I would like physically go like vomit from being nervous for the night because I didn't know how much sleep
Mhm.
I was going to get. I didn't know how long she was going to cry. Would I get her to stop crying? And then how long would she sleep? And I just would go through like this all night cycle of like just worry. And I never worried that something was going to happen to her. I never, like, it wasn't that kind of anxiety or depression that a lot of women face. Mine was just selfishly like about myself. Like, I have to get good sleep. And I am just like, when I don't get sleep, I'm like,
I'm the same
and
way.
so not knowing what the night was going to bring and her crying and waking up multiple times and stuff was just so anxiety inducing for me. Um, that I mean, that's why my kids are 4 years apart, because I was like terrified to do it again because it was so bad.
Do you feel like that when you said you felt like somebody died? Like,
Yeah.
do
I
you
felt like
have
it was
a sense of
me.
like it was you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that until I started talking with a therapist and got on medication and kind of like evened out a little bit. And I was like, I just like, I wake up and I feel like I lost like somebody close to me, and I can't, like that's what it
Mhm.
feels like, just like that knot in your stomach, and then I realized like it was me. It was my old life. Like we used to be able to just do whatever we wanted to do and sleep in until 11 and go out, and I would be at games with him, and it would be like Friday night fireworks, and I'm like, "Should I meet you in Detroit tomorrow?" And it's like, "Yeah." I'm
Mhm.
like sitting on the field like booking a ticket, and like I could do that, And so
Mhm.
to be tied down essentially and not be able to have that freedom anymore, and this huge responsibility was a lot for me. Yeah, I felt like I was the one who had died. And once I figured that out, it was easier for me to like improve my symptoms of depression and anxiety, because it was like I was able to speak into existence to myself that like my life is not over. I'm still me.
Mhm.
We're still us. It's just now we're us with somebody else.
Yeah.
And life is not over, and you can get a sitter. You can go places and have your baby stay with grandma and grandpa, and it's okay. And
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that your life is over. Your life is just different. I think that helped me get over that hump a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a loss of identity. I think that
Mhm.
so many women deal with that. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously in your situation, like, not many of us are married to professional athletes, obviously,
Right.
but like
Yeah.
that that lifestyle changes. Like
Yeah.
everything changes. You can't just like pick up the bag and go to Target. Like,
Right. That's
like
yeah.
you can't just like walk out your door even to
Yeah.
get the mail. Like,
I know.
like
I
everything's so different.
My mom would come stay with us, and she stayed with us for like the first like 9 days when I came home. And so she's an early riser, so like 5:30. So she'd wake up and she'd tell us to go back to bed, and then she'd handle Palmer until we woke up. And that's like when I would wake up and I would literally go like hide in the closet because I just like didn't want to face the day. And then she'd send us to the store or something. We'd need diapers. She's like, "Why don't you go?" We'd literally turn back down my street, and I would just start crying because I like didn't want to go
Mhm.
home. And it's like
Mhm.
so much guilt, because you're
Mhm.
like, that baby did, like, it's not that I didn't love her or anything like that, but it's like, why am I feeling like I don't want to go care for her or spend time with her? And it was just so much of like not me speaking.
Yeah. Well, and grief, right?
Yeah.
Like it was showing up as grief, like
Hmm.
grieving, and
Yeah.
it's something that a lot of people don't talk about because
Yeah.
heaven forbid, like you don't want to like show up for your baby every
You
second of every
admit,
day in
yeah.
every way. Like, how dare you be a mom that like struggles with this responsibility and
And I
this,
had friends that like their whole like goal in life ever, ever, ever was to be a mom. And that just like wasn't me, and it has never been me. And obviously I love being a mom now, but like that's never been like my purpose on this earth is to be a mom, like before I became a mom. And
Right.
so I felt guilty, like, why don't I feel like that? Like, why don't
Mm.
I, why am I not attached at the hip? Or, you see moms be like, it's been a year. I've never spent one night away from my baby. Like, I couldn't do it. I don't know how people do it. Then you're like, well, I want to. Like, is that bad? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, why should I be? Am I too trusting? Like, what should I be worrying? And so, yeah, it's definitely a comparison game when you're a mom too.
Oh yeah, yeah, and the guilt, and I mean,
Mhm.
we guilt ourselves enough into everything as
Yeah.
it flows. So,
Yeah.
um, being vulnerable and being honest about the fact that, like, I have talked about this many times. Like, my self care could be considered selfish in a lot of certain mom
Yeah.
circles. Like, I'm going to
Hmm.
feed myself before I feed my kids. I'm going
Yeah.
to take care of myself before I like take care of
Hmm.
my kids. I'm going to shower. I'm going to
Yeah.
do the things that I need to do
Yeah.
for me because otherwise I am not the version of myself that I want to be for them
Yeah.
either. And it's a spiral, right?
I,
So, like,
yeah.
speaking differently about it in that way is just, especially in postpartum when you have hormones and
Hmm.
like your
Yeah.
body's so different and you're leaking from every orifice
Mhm. Yeah,
possible.
literally. Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like myself. I don't look like myself. I'm not, and yeah, lack of sleep, like all of it. It's just such a hard time. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you speaking to that because it's not easy.
No, it's not. And I think I recognized like what was my triggers with,
Mhm.
what sent me into a spiral. And I was so terrified to head into a baseball season where Jake would go on the road for 7 days and I'd be home
Mhm.
alone with the baby with no breaks and every
Mhm.
night. And what if she had a bad night? And so like the thought of it, like just like every day, it was just like tick, 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 one day closer to doing this by myself. And and I just was like,
Mhm.
I'm like scared and I also am in like a really bad headspace. And so we ended up hiring a live-in nanny and it was one of my best friends from college's little sister. And
Mhm.
she was young and hated her job out of college. And she just came with us and it was like such a godsend that I've never this like and I've always been open about this, but I also feel like sometimes I not like embarrassed about it, but I'm just like I'm not going to come out and say it unless somebody like directly asks me. But we've had a nanny every season since that
Yeah.
lives with us, and so we don't have a nanny during the off season because we're both home. But we do have somebody that lives with us um, during the season, and we've done that now for the past 5 years. And I just don't think that I would truly like I know survive is like a strong word, but like actually like I don't know that I would like be here without the help and
Mhm.
support of somebody. And so it just being
Well, you
able
don't
to
have family
identify.
around.
Yes.
You don't have
Yeah.
family around. Your husband's not around.
Hmm.
You're in a strange place, like
Yeah.
9 times out of
Being
10.
able
Like,
to like identify though that like I need somebody and
yeah.
to be able to like hear and let me go, do whatever and go grocery shop without having to rush back and even go get my nails done or like, most baseball games are night games. And so to be able to
Right.
go to a night game while keeping your baby on a schedule because for your sanity, your kid needs to be on a schedule. Like I firmly believe
Yeah.
that. And I know that doesn't work for everybody. And a lot of people in baseball put their kids in baseball schedules. So they come
Mhm.
to the night games and they don't go to bed till midnight and then they sleep in till 10 a.m. But like for me, if Jake is on the road, like I don't want my kid up with me till midnight. Like I don't want to stay up
Mhm.
till midnight, let alone, a
Mhm.
kid that doesn't know how to regulate their, times and stuff like
Yep.
that. And so for me to identify that I needed that help and be able to go to games alone and know that my baby was going to bed on time and taken care of was very important to me and honestly like I said saved me. And then when we had Charlie, we hired an overnight doula because that was the part that scared me the most was the overnight side. And Charlie was born in mid-season, so that was also just a change and I didn't want Jake to be losing sleep when he's going to perform this high stakes role. And so we did that and that also just like I can honestly say I've had like little to no like depression or anxiety this time around because I feel like I just identified what I needed to work through these emotions and it was just like something that we budget for and just take into
Mhm.
consideration and sometimes I do feel like I see other moms doing it without any help or without any nannies or anything. And it's like, sounds crazy, but it's like rare for people to have a nanny in baseball. Like,
Mhm.
only over the last like couple years has it become like more of a thing for people. And so I do feel guilty because I'm like, how are they doing it, by themselves? And they have multiple kids. But then I realized, like, if I want to be the best mom that I can be and the best version of myself and the best wife and the best, like, head of household when my husband's not around, like, this is what I need to be able to balance it all.
Yeah, it sounds like any woman that needs support,
Yeah.
right? Like
Hmm.
we need support, and
Yeah.
that's a value I think that most women hold dear, near and dear to
Yeah.
their hearts, no matter who they are or how they're showing up in the world, like being
Hmm.
supported and
Yeah.
feeling like they're not alone
I also
in
think it takes
navigating.
a lot of courage to admit that you need help, you know,
Yes.
to admit that, like, you can't do it all, because I think we live in this world where women are expected and supposed to do it all. And
Yep.
people love, and obviously, like, I do feel like I do it all anyways, like, even with help, but I couldn't if I didn't have the help either. So,
Right.
like, yeah, I take care of a lot of things and I make sure like everything is in order, and that during season my husband doesn't have to worry about anything, because I recognize the fact that he supports our family financially and that we
Hmm.
live the life that we do because of what he does, and its importance. And I know it doesn't last forever, and that I'll get, my turn to be able to focus on, any passions of mine that I might not feel like were fulfilled, or,
Yeah.
whatever. And so, yeah, I think I try and remind myself that, like, it's courageous of me to ask for help, because a lot of people don't.
No, and it's so important. It's so important to be able to like ask for that, and whether
Hmm.
that's through family support, nanny,
Hmm.
friends, like anyone around
Yeah.
you at any point in life, whether it's children or not, like to ask for that help and support because we all need it. It's
Hmm.
like who's going to ask first, and then
Hmm.
now the door's open.
Yeah.
we can actually be real with each other on like
Right.
how we're
Right.
actually functioning.
I've turned so many baseball families onto the idea of having a nanny, because, like, they feel like it's too much money and it's not worth it, and I can do it, and and yes, all of that is true, but I reason with them about how to pay for it financially, and how, I think they see me going to games without kids, or
Mhm.
being able to go meet Jake on the road somewhere for 2 days and know that my kids are taken care of by somebody that they trust, that they've known for years, and
Mhm.
I can have this like freedom to
Mhm.
live this life that is very short lived, because playing a professional sport, I think the average in MLB is like 4 or 5 years, and Jake's going on year 13. And so I think when
Mhm.
someday we're going to look back and it's just going to be this tiny little like blimp on our life map, think if you live till 90 years old, and 6 years of your life is not that much in the grand scheme of things. And so I think that we just try and make the most of it while we can and while we're in it, because, we have the rest of our lives to do it all ourselves.
Right. Absolutely. Embracing the moment as much as
Hmm.
possible right
Yeah.
now. Um, I wanted to ask you, I know Charlie, right? Is that your second? Is that right?
Hmm.
Um, is a rainbow baby.
Yes. It is.
So on your journey again since the previous pageant 10 years
Yeah.
ago, like we've talked about Jake, we've talked about,
Hmm.
postpartum anxiety, all those things. And then you had a loss, one
Hmm.
loss, is that
Yeah.
right? In between
Hmm.
your two babes.
Yeah.
I hear that was probably a journey as well.
Yeah, so I feel like I finally got the courage to be like, okay, I think I could do another. I think I want to do this. I think I can do this. I'm ready. And we got pregnant and had a miscarriage. And it was like, see, like, I knew it, like, we were fine
Mhm.
how it was. And now I have this like trauma to add on top of it, where it's like I finally felt like I was ready, and then this happens, and now I have another thing to fear about motherhood and
Mhm.
about pregnancy and all that stuff. And so that was like definitely something to overcome as well, and be like, why, I was like, why did we try and fix something that wasn't broken? And, like, my
Mhm.
husband was more pushing to have another. And it was like
Mhm.
a little bit of resentment towards, like, well, you made me be ready before I was ready. And then look what happened. And it's like,
Mhm.
you feel just like all these things. But for me, it was very important for me to like just get back on the horse, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just, I couldn't let too much time pass, because then I think you let the fear like build up. And I think I learned that through um, spreading out our kids so much, was like, there was a lot of years in between. And so I feel like I just like kept getting more fearful, and being like, oh, I'm finally
Mm-hmm.
figuring out, if I have a kid, then this is going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. And, and I started like telling these lies to myself. And so I just said, this time, something that scares me and that like was trauma for me, I'm just going to jump back in and try again. And if it's the Lord's will, then, and timing, then it will be. And, it took 2 cycles, but we conceived our Charlie. And I feel like that was so like pivotal to me, just to be able to like just keep trying, because
Mm-hmm.
I knew that we were destined to have another. And I felt like if I let it simmer longer, it's just going to scare me more, and I'm going to read more and do more research and, like all the things.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you're definitely not alone in that, and being able to speak to it, like being able to
Mm-hmm.
speak to a loss. And
Yeah.
um, that's a huge part, and it's a huge trauma that so many women carry in their hearts
Yeah.
and within their bodies and everything else. And being able, there, some women don't feel the capacity to try
Mm-hmm.
again because of it for so
Yeah.
long. And like taking the approach that you did is so, special. And
Yeah.
everybody's individual there, but being able to like see it, for know yourself enough to know
Yeah.
like what the next steps that you needed to
Mm-hmm.
do to be successful and feel excited about your next steps.
Yeah. And I feel like
And
it made me want it more too, because I already,
mm-hmm,
it's not like I didn't want another kid, but I was so nervous about it that like it kind of dimmed that excitement a little bit. And so I think having a miscarriage just made you want it that much more. And then I think I enjoyed the newborn stage more my second time around, because it was my rainbow, because it was something that I really, really was excited and wanted, and had convinced. I think your mind is so powerful. And so for me to
mm-hmm,
be like, I want another baby, I want another baby, I want another baby, made me like not worry so much about the anxiety of the newborn stage that I hated so much with my first. And I had
right,
such a different, more beautiful experience this time around. And yeah, but it's hard. It's hard to have a miscarriage in a city where you don't have any family. Your friends are
mm-hmm,
baseball wives who you just met. And while
right,
they're very supportive and they're your friend, they're not your mom, and your husband is
mm-hmm,
gone. And, when you have a baby in baseball, your husband gets 72 hours off. That's it. And then they have to be
mm-hmm,
back with the team. When you have a miscarriage, that doesn't count. So it's like,
right,
it, I was lucky in the sense that they happened to be home in Boston when it happened. And so he was there, and it was just, his coaches were like, I don't care what time you get to the game, like do what you got to do. Or if you need a day, like we're home. Like it made such a difference, because it's not like he would have to get on a plane to come back, and it's not like a quick thing. And so I feel like that was very helpful, and also heartbreaking, because it was just the two of
yeah,
us and we didn't have, and to go to that appointment. And because it was at an appointment that we had found out, we were just getting an ultrasound and there was no heartbeat, and having to call our parents and be like, how'd it go? Like, what did they say?
right,
Like, what, did you get
right,
any pictures today? And it was like, no, and this is happening. And my best friend on the team was pregnant with her first, and we were just so excited to be pregnant together and be able to do it together. And then it was just this like, why me? Like, why did this happen to, like, why did this have to happen? And then it was like, I was throwing the baby shower for the wives on the
mm-hmm,
Red Sox that were pregnant. And it was, less than a month after I had had my miscarriage. And it's like, I'm throwing this baby shower that I was supposed to be in. And the reason that I
mm-hmm,
was going to throw it regardless was because it was my second kid, so it was like more of a sprinkle for
right,
me, but like, and so it just was like, I was just so sad of why did this
right,
happen to us, or like, why me? What did I do wrong? Like, what, And then we also had found out that it was a boy. And
mm,
like, my husband's dream is to have a boy, and mine too, because like you see your other baseball friends bringing their boys to the field and stuff. And like I said, like we've said a bunch of times, like baseball doesn't last forever. So it was like,
mm-hmm,
hearing that was like extra heartbreaking because it was like, was that our one chance, or, you know, and then obviously we have another girl. And so it does still like stick with me of like, was that our chance? Like, what, you know, will that ever happen again? Like, why couldn't that have worked out? You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you had Charlie, obviously, like a beautiful, awesome little rainbow that she is.
And I also think there's something to be said about like, if you know, because I've had a lot of friends that have had miscarriages, including that friend that was my best friend that was pregnant with me. She had a miscarriage trying for their second. And one of my best friends in baseball, you know, had one. And it's now I can speak to the fact that if I had not had that loss, we wouldn't have Charlie. And I think like it's so powerful to like look at it that way. And somebody had told me that, and I didn't get it at the time because I didn't have one. But now that I do, it's like that actually it did stick with me when she told me that, when she said that to me, of like, I wouldn't have my son if, you know, we hadn't lost that one in between, and I can't imagine life without him. And it did stick with me. I was like, I can't wait to feel that and like hope that that does ring true. And it so does. And so to be able to pass that on to friends and tell them that, it's like, I know someday when they do have their rainbow, like they're going to feel the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a full circle moment for sure. And then, so when did you join Victorous?
I joined in November of last year.
Okay, so November of last year.
Yeah.
Had you decided you were going to compete in
Not yet.
Mrs. Nebraska at that point?
No.
Okay, I was curious on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were what?
I think
like
I decided in like February, like beginning of February, because I started like losing weight and seeing results and being like, feeling like myself. And I was like, what's going to give me this extra kick to like, you know, get myself feeling back to myself. And that's when I was like, pageantry, you know? So I was like, quit.
So you were fairly postpartum then when you joined, right?
Yeah. So Charlie was born at the end of May. So so like 5 months.
Yeah. And then, so from the Victorous experience, obviously, like joining as a member, I think that there are a lot of things that make Victorous unique in the space of fitness, but also just like women empowerment, women's, you know, camaraderie, community, all of those things. How did that experience, like, or if that experience started to transform you in any way?
Yeah, when I was in the best shape of my life, it was through weight training. But I always had a trainer because that was part of like the prize package, was somebody to train you and tell you what to do. And so I was able to do that. And then I noticed like you just forget things, and, you know, you start to do like the at-home workouts, which are great, but that's also somebody telling you what to do. So it was like, I wanted to get back into lifting and being able to like use the barbell and, you know, use the machines and stuff, but like couldn't quite remember how to do things right, or just kind of felt like fish out of water a little bit. And like walking around aimlessly, like at the gym, was just like, like, you know, you just feel so dumb. And then I think Angie Ashley had told me about Victorous and that I should try it. And she had trained me too. Like she trained me for my wedding, and then you know, here and there for different things, but still, like, that's still somebody telling you what to do. So I was like, I love Pilates. I've always loved doing Pilates, like on the reformer, but that like is not a super big thing here in Lincoln. I know there is like studios, but like I did it a lot whenever we're in baseball season, because in big cities, like that's like the the core power and like all those things. Like I loved to do that, but they didn't have that here, like to my knowledge. And so Angie had suggested going to Victorous, and that's like one thing that I loved so much about it, was like we're all weightlifting together and they're helping you learn how to do it. And it is like a one-on-one session, but not, because you have all the support of all the women around you. And I don't know how I got into the 9 a.m. class, like how I chose like that. I don't even remember, but I'm so glad that I did, because it's like every time I'm home now, I'm like, I have to make it to 9 a.m. Like I want to go to 9 a.m. because it's like, I just love everybody that's in that class, and I love the support and like the high energy. And I actually had a friend, I posted a video today on my story, during the workout, and I had a friend be like, oh my gosh, it's like making my heart flutter just thinking about it, because like thinking of everybody just looking at me and judging me. And I was like, no, it's not like that at all. Like, it's actually the complete opposite. And I love that it's only women, and that makes it like less intimidating to me, and that everybody's so supportive. And I was like, believe it or not, like it is the exact opposite. And I think that that's like something that's really cool and that you don't get other places. And I also feel like even when you're in Pilates, you know, you go to those reformer classes and like the instructor's talking so fast, and if you don't remember like the move that she's saying, it's like you're looking around and then you're like embarrassed. And even then, like it's, you know, you feel like a little bit like embarrassed. And I have never felt like that at all at Victress. And it's like, that's something that I love so much about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all
Yeah.
of that. That was very nice of you.
No, it's true. It's true.
No, yeah, I would agree. I mean, that was the goal, right? Like, was to
Yeah.
create a space for women to show up and realize their own power through a
Mhm.
barbell or through
Yeah.
movement.
Yeah.
And not necessarily, you know, we use the word like empowered movement, but really
Mhm.
like we're just trying to use movement to find your own power and your
Yeah.
own, the way that you show up in the world, and doing it alongside other women in a positive, like
Yeah.
impactful way where we're uplifting each other. Are there times where there's competition? Sure, but like
Yeah.
it's
Only
as
if you
much as
want it
there.
to be, though. You know, like
Exactly.
you don't have to show up for those. You don't have to sign up to
No,
do the competition side. It's like,
no.
that's like one thing that I that scares me about some going to some places like Orange Theory, for example, is like the screen that tells you like who's doing
Right.
what and who's in what order. And it's like even when you're on the Peloton, like they're ranking
Mm-hmm.
you next to the person, you know, and then it's just like
Mm-hmm.
I hate that feeling. And I just love that Victress is like wherever you are at is like
Mm-hmm.
perfect for you. Whatever's a challenge for you might not be a challenge for the next person or vice versa. But like that's like the beauty of it, is I feel like I like that everybody's just like in their own, like they're competing against
Yes.
themselves, and but yet the support of everybody around them, like it's just really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the goal, and people like you are what make it possible, truly, like members that buy into that within
Mm-hmm.
themselves.
Yeah.
And you know, supporting each other. And like you said, like the 9 a.m. is just like so supportive of everyone and
Mm-hmm.
inclusive, and like, hey, come on in. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it is such a empowering environment in that way. Um, and so within the pageantry space, like
Yeah.
how important is that like physical aesthetic? You know, I think a lot of people have like bikini competition,
Mm-hmm.
or like, a pageant being like once removed from like a bodybuilding competition,
Mm-hmm.
or like whatever it may be, like within that space. Like, how important is it, number one, from, you know, a physical fitness standpoint, but also like I think like there's a lot of myths around it that maybe you can speak to a little bit.
Yeah, so it depends on the system. So when I went to Miss USA, it was very like beauty and body focused. And then say Miss America, for example, is more of scholarship, talent, interview focused. And then Mrs. America is obviously a bunch of older women of a certain age and married, kids, you know, just people that have been through more life than when you're 20 years old, you know, and have the fastest
Mhm.
metabolism alive. But so I think in this system that I'm doing now, it's so much more about like your stage presence and your confidence than like what your body looks like. And while it's important to look physically fit, I remember on the score sheet for state, for the swimsuit competition, it said like physical fitness for their body type, you know? So it was like,
Mm,
it was more about you and how you carried yourself and, you know, the way that like for you know what I mean? I don't like know how to
yeah.
explain it, but so that's something that's really cool for me, because I know in Mrs. America specifically, like they really want to stress that like women can do, you know, can be a wife, a mother, and still do pageants and still be glamorous and, you know, be down to earth and smart and, you know, give back to their community. And their slogan is "We are family." And I think that's like really
Hmm.
cool, because family, once you're married and have kids, like that is everything to you, you know,
Hmm.
like career kind of takes a back seat for most people, I think. And so to be in a pageant where the focus is like on, you as a person and what you do for your family and, you know,
Mhm.
how you're a wife and a mom and being able to like talk about your kids and talk about your husband and talk about giving back to your community. Like that's something that I find is like really cool. So I would say for this system, swimsuit is like not, you know, it's more so about
Right.
how you carry yourself.
That's a really cool way to say it. Like for
Hmm.
your body type, like
Yeah. Yeah.
how are you feeling in your own skin, like
Hmm.
to the,
Yeah.
within that space? And it takes a lot of guts to stand up there in
Yeah.
a freaking swimsuit, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
It does.
Like
Yeah, it does.
that's
But it's also like one of the
terrifying.
most empowering things I've ever done because it's like
Mhm.
I'm doing this and I've worked really hard and I'm up there because I'm proud, you know, and I'm proud to
Mhm.
show the hard work that I've done. And I think that that's like, I always like swimsuit is like one of my favorite parts of competition because I'm like, yeah, look how hard I worked. And, you know, it's like so rewarding and to just like get up there and like, be confident and have them like and being willing to let people like judge you in a swimsuit is like you walk off being like, oh my god, I'm invincible. Like, you know, try and judge me. Like I feel so good right now.
That's so amazing. That's so
Yeah.
amazing. And like it's such a unique, I mean, just to be able to speak to it in that way versus like
Yeah.
feeling like the insecurity or the imposter or like any of those things, like
Yeah.
the process that it took you to get into that mindset again.
If you lean into it and recognize the hard work that you've done and the fact that you're just up there trying and putting yourself out there, like you feel like such a badass because you're like a lot of people would be too scared to even like think about doing something like this. And you know, a lot of people like give pageants a hard time and about being judged or whatever, but it's like nobody's dragging anybody up on stage. Like they knew what they were signing up for. So like if you're doing a
Mhm.
pageant, it's because you want to be there for A, B, or
Mhm.
C reason. You know, it's not like it's not objectifying women or it's not, you know, this outdated thing. It's like nobody's forcing you to do this. So the
Right.
fact that you're
Right.
doing it, like why don't you listen to why they're doing it and you might learn something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I think the dedication that it takes to do something like that, like the self-care
Mhm.
aspect that, you've had to commit to since,
Mhm.
well, really over the last 10 years,
Yeah.
right? Like everything that you've been through that has led you to back to the stage essentially and to be able to get up
Mhm.
there and obviously win is just like absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
But like all of the challenges that you've been through that have helped shape and like helps you become who you are right now and how
Mhm.
you're showing up and be able to showcase that is incredible. Like
Yeah.
on a bigger stage, but with the intention of also like being able to use your voice to give back and
Right.
to, share your story of,
Mhm.
like I said, the last 10 years, all of the struggles, like share your perspectives
Yeah.
for women to not only like I think it's one thing I think we are constantly judged aesthetically no matter who we are and how we show up in the world that's
Mhm.
just like by default but how dare we use our voice a lot
Yeah.
and this is a platform that is really empowering you to use that voice and find it and speak to things in your
Yeah.
own way.
Yeah, I think it's cool because most people have what they call a platform in pageantry, which is your why and why are you doing this? And, you know, one of the things that is a surefire question to be asked you is why do you want to be blank title or why should
Mhm.
you? And you know, if you're doing it to just put a shiny crown on your head, it's like go find somewhere else. Like that's not
Mhm.
the majority. Like the majority is like I always say like people are more willing to listen to somebody talk when they have like a shiny crown on their head. And so if you have something that's important to you and you call and you say like I'm Mrs. Nebraska and I want to come, you know, speak to your students about this, it's like of course, like what day works. But if I was just Amanda, it's like, well, let me see, you know, like what's the pitch or like what's the, you know, what's the
Right.
reasoning or whatever. And so I think that's something really cool in pageantry is to like find something that you're passionate about. And it can be multiple things. Like we love to give back to our community. That's always been who I am as a person. Like my love language is acts of service, like both ways. Like I love to do things for others. I love to like I'm always the one that throws like the baby shower or the bridal shower. Like I love to make people happy and just like do things for people and whether that's community service and then I love, you know, obviously like my love language back is like Jake like taking out the trash or like, you know, cleaning the kitchen or watching the kids and being like, you go do, you know, do this or something without having
Yeah.
to nag about it. And so that's just like an aspect of pageantry that I love is just like you can do so much good with a title. And you can
Yeah.
without it, but it's just easier to get your foot in the door sometimes.
Well, and you can elevate other voices, right? Like you can
Mm-hmm.
elevate so
Have a
many
platform
different.
for you. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Um, Last little bit here. When moving forward, obviously now you are headed into Mrs. America,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Yes.
Now, when is that?
So I'll leave August 19th, and the
Okay.
actual pageant will be August 28th.
Okay. And
Yeah,
that's like very soon.
I know.
And
Yeah.
Vegas, is that right?
Yep. It's in Vegas. So mom's gone wild in Vegas.
I was gonna say, do you have like a room blocked for all of 9 a.m. to come and like
Oh my
cheer
gosh, I
people?
know, right? That'd be so awesome. Yeah. I, I'll have a roommate while I'm there, and which is another contestant, and we'll be there without our kids and without our husbands and just doing
That's so,
it.
yep, it's just doing the thing. And how many days?
I think it's like 9 or 10 days. Yeah, it's a long time. But when I went to
Wow.
USA, it was almost 3 weeks. So it's a vacation.
Wow. Now, are you doing these every single day?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And like interviews.
Yep. So we'll do interview, I think, like 2 days before the actual pageant. And then they actually do prelims and finals on the same day. So you'll do it like first half of the day, and then finals is like second half of the day. So
Okay.
it's
I
a,
mean, what are our chances here? Like, what can we
oh
do?
my
What can
gosh.
we do?
I don't know. Maybe when if they do a people's choice, I'll definitely be sending the link.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think just like engaging on like on my social media posts, like about the pageant and stuff, I think is like very important to just like bring hype to somebody. And, you always want to be in somebody's ear when they're, or, in the back of somebody's mind, because like the more you see like somebody, I feel like the more you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, like I like her, whatever. So I
Yeah.
say probably, yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
How has this experience, like coming back, changed you already with everything that you've been through for, the last 10 years? How has like being on stage again and obviously winning it probably helps, but
Yeah.
just like going through that experience again, how has that changed you?
I think I'm just in such a different place now, being married and having kids, and just like being very content with who I am as a person, and like in my own skin, and just not caring so much about outside opinion. I think one thing that one of pageant directors always said, before the pageant, was like, there's a difference between disappointment and what was the word she said? I just had it in my head. There's a difference between disappointment and being like devastated, I think is the word that she
Hmm.
used. And I
Hmm.
think that a lot of people like do struggle with that when you don't win, because ultimately only one person walks away as the winner. And I obviously won Miss Nebraska USA, but I did not win Miss USA. And like I was very upset. It like sticks with you. I wasn't like so upset, because I did make the top 15, which like Nebraska had not done in a while. And so that was like really exciting for me. And like that was my goal. And so I felt really great about that. But you do leave and go like, what could I have done differently? Or like, why, like, why didn't I make it past the top 15? Like what, you watch it and you're like trying to figure it out. And I feel like now, just being content with who I am and confident with who I am, I don't think like it's not everything. Like I'm not going to walk away and be like, it's just not going to be the same. It's either like it's me or it's not. And if it's not me, like that doesn't define who I am. That doesn't
Hmm.
like it's not my worth. That's not my value in this world. And I think like it's just going to be such a different reaction this time around.
Hmm.
And I felt the same way about state. It was like, if I win, great, amazing, super exciting. But if I don't, like I'm still my kids' best friend. I'm still a wife to somebody who loves me. My family still loves me. I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody anymore. And so I feel like that's just like the difference in me now. It's like I think that's something so powerful about doing a pageant with a bunch of other moms and wives and people that are in that same like area of life as me, is like we're all just like very content with who we are, and I think I'll just enjoy it so much more this time.
What an amazing like way to articulate that. Like
Yeah.
I love the way you said that. And
Yeah.
you know, and in a space where most people wouldn't think that, right? Like
Mhm.
in the pageantry world where most people probably wouldn't think that the women standing there have that mindset that you
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
articulated. And like,
I
that's
think it's
just like
cool. Like we've
so
all
powerful.
kids, our bodies are all different than they were before. And like some people may have done pageants before, some people may have not done pageants before. Like I think that the way that they value, like you don't have to be the prettiest one in the room, but like if you're the most confident, most outgoing, you care about your community, you love your family, you are comfortable in your own skin, like that's who we want. And I think that's just like something that's so cool because like I said, we're all just in that different stage of life. And it's like just going to be so much more relaxed. I feel like, it's not like we're trying to get our foot in the door some way by like doing this pageant. Like a lot of people, when they go to Miss USA, it's like a stepping stone for them, to get into
Right.
entertainment or to whatever. And it's like, no, like we're going to leave and we're still going to be moms and wives of people that adore us, and that's just really cool to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're able to just represent like all women
Yeah.
everywhere, really, just on a
Yeah.
different level. Like,
Yeah.
you're taking this a step further, but what can happen and the feeling that you can embody with a crown on your head when you're able to just step into your own skin and own who you are,
Yeah.
right? Like you're
Yeah.
tangibly doing it, but you're also representing like what is possible for any
Hmm.
woman anywhere at any
Right.
stage.
I've gotten messages from people being like, "You've like empowered me. Like I'm gonna look into this. Like I think that's like really
Hmm.
cool, or like I think that's so badass that you did that in spite of everything that we have going on in the baseball world and whatever else. And like it's cool. It's like it means a lot that you can like pull people out of like, well, I could do that. Like
Right.
that's
Well,
really cool.
and you found your own thing again.
Hmm.
Like you went
Yeah.
back and found something for you, like
Hmm.
when it hasn't necessarily been that way for a
Yeah.
while. So that
Yeah.
has to feel very full circle.
Yeah. Definitely, for sure.
Well, thank you very much
Yeah.
for so
Thank
much of
you.
your time. I truly
Yeah,
appreciate the
I love.
conversation and getting to know you more.
No, you
Um,
too.
I am sure lots of people will enjoy hearing this, and we'll get it out to the universe here
Yeah.
soon. But enjoy your last few days in the Midwest, I suppose.
I know. We're gonna go back on Sunday for 2 weeks, and then we're gonna come back in August, like permanently, because Palmer's starting kindergarten, and I'm going to the pageant, and we'll see what happens after
Yeah,
that. I'm like, I can only take
yeah.
it a month at a time right now. So
1 month at a time, I'm sure.
yeah,
In season, it's probably just like chunks at a
yeah.
time.
We
Yeah.
won't even talk about the
Well,
deadline being in 2 weeks, so we'll see what happens there. So
oh wow.
you never know.
Yeah. Well, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll see you in the gym sometime this week
Okay.
as well. So,
Yep. I'll be
all
there.
right. All right, Amanda. Thanks,
Bye.
girl.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.